Oh, hi. Welcome back, Honors. Is on this snow day, right? So, we're gonna do another flip today. This one might be a little bit longer, just because we had the day off and we want to stay on track and stuff like that, and blah 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 blah. But let's go ahead and get after it, right? So we spent the last couple of days talking about these societies that exist inside of early Americas, right? So, Rufio, scoot, go on. I don't want to come down on your tail. Anyway, so sorry, his tail was under my chair. Now, after Columbus landed in the Americas, though, this is going to start a chain reaction that's drastically going to affect the lives of the native people, right? So, but let's go ahead and get into the people that Columbus came into contact with. The people that he said were as naked as the day they were born, right? So, since Columbus landed in the Bahamas, the Tainos are going to be the first people that he interacts with. Okay, so this right here is pronounced Taino, not Taino, not Taino, but Taino. Okay, they are natives of the Caribbean. They are the largest indigenous group in the Caribbean, including Cuba, Puerto Rico, the DR, Haiti, the Virgin Islands. Right, take up a large amount of area. They had a very, very sophisticated little culture. They had intense dwellings that they had actually constructed on their own. Other systems like transportation over the water through the islands, larger boats, things like that. So they weren't as sophisticated as like the Aztecs or the Inca, like we talked about. They weren't doing like brain surgery or anything like the Incas were. However, they are going to be a very sophisticated people. And the first thing they do is they actually welcome Columbus with open arms, right? With open arms, they're like, hey, what's up? Y'all showed up on these really, really cool boat things, and it's going to be great, right? One of the very first things that Columbus and his conquistadors try to do is they try to push Christianity onto them, right? So they immediately start trying to actually convert them to Christianity. Well, they're not going to accept it, and the relationships are soon going to go downhill. Columbus is going to then take over their land and claim it for the authority of the Spanish. He's going to plant that flag and say that this is now property of the Spanish, right? He actually sets up a home base in Puerto Rico. Ponce de Leon lives there, and he actually apparently witnessed some of the most atrocities that actually occurred under the reign of Columbus. A lot of different assaults of people, a lot of really gruesome punishments and things like that. He's even going to bring a bunch of the prisoners, a bunch of the Tainos back as gifts for Isabella, right? So now, the thing about it is some of you are like, well, there's no way that they were trying to force Christianity onto them that hard. Keep in mind, you're dealing with the monarchs of Spain that had the Spanish Inquisition, where they literally tried to force Jews and Muslims in their own country to convert or die, all right? So can we see why they were probably trying to push it as hard as they could? The trend in Spain at the time was to push Christianity as absolutely as hard as you could. So, now the thing about it is, it's not going to be the Spanish straight up that destroy these people, right? Because Columbus is the first wave of a group of people known as conquistadors, right? Now, a conquistador is also known as a Spanish conqueror, right? They are Spanish explorers or conquerors, military descendants that actually come in and try to usurp land in the name of Spain and its government. So, there are many, many more natives than there are conquistadors. But keep in mind, the Spanish have three massive advantages over the natives that the natives just simply don't have. And that includes guns, even though they were garbage at the time, cannons, which were much better than the guns at the time, and horses. Some of you are saying, horses aren't that big of a deal. Actually, according to Jared Diamond, who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, one of the big reasons why Americans, like early Americans, never actually advanced, write this down, has to also do with the fact that they didn't have access to large base metallurgy. The Aztecs had started discovering bronze and started using it, but they didn't still use it in the same type of proprietary sense as the Romans and the Greeks did during the Bronze Age. So, one, not limited limited access to metal. And two, they didn't have large beasts of burden, right? The discovery of horses and other beasts of burden, including oxen and cow and things like that, is another reason why Europeans were able to advance as quickly as they did, because they could actually set up large-scale agricultural things. The only beast of burden that was actually really seen in any of these places was llamas, and they can only carry 60 pounds because they're useless. Now, anyway, so the alpacas are cute when they're babies, though. At least give them that. But also, the Americas are going to really be counteracted by a large bout of disease that's going to hit them, particularly in three forms. You're going to have your measles, you're going to have your smallpox, and you're going to have your influenza, right? Smallpox being the worst out of all three. So the natives also had no immunity or resistance to any of these diseases. Some of you are asking yourself, wait a minute, how come smallpox didn't kill Europeans? Well, because, think about it, brainiacs. Smallpox, it existed in Europe for eons. Europeans had developed an immunity to it, biologically speaking. I'm trying to move my chair, so that I know this looks weird. But biologically speaking, they actually had somewhat of an immunity to it. And then there's this other guy later on who actually develops a smallpox vaccine based off of cowpox. So the Europeans were doing fine with these things. But 9 out of every 10 native people in the Caribbean, the Tainos, died from these diseases. Later on, they would be assimilated into the Spanish colonial environment. Some of their traditions still hang on today, but they're very limited, right? So you can actually see right here, this is a documented drawing from Aztecs that are actually documenting the progression of smallpox through some of their natives, right? So the smallpox disease was a terrible one, and it destroyed a lot of lives. But then you got this guy, all right? So we know what Columbus did. We know that he set up these areas. Really quick thing, too, write this down somewhere. Columbus never left the Caribbean, all right? Never left the Caribbean. He died back in Europe. Never, ever went to mainland North America or South America. I think he might have had one voyage to, like, Central America one time, but he pretty much did all of his work in the Caribbean. So, however, while on the Caribbean, ooh, intriguing, the Spanish are going to hear word of a mainland people that have access to more gold than you know what to do with. And so, of course, the Spanish begin to salivate, right? They're just, really? Right? So, it's kind of like that look that Von Hoot gets on his face sometimes when I say some weird fact or something that he thinks might not be real. He's like, really? So, anyway, Hernan Cortes, a huge jerk, lands in Mexico in 1519 with the intent of conquering all and claiming riches for Spain, right? So he comes into contact with a lot of people first, okay? Comes into contact with a lot of different native groups that the Aztecs had already taken control of. The same people that they received taxes in the form of human sacrifice, right? When I showed you all those pictures, right? Like that all stuff. So he hears about that through these natives, and they tell him that their capital is called Tenochtitlan, and it's that way, right? Well, Cortes begins to journey through the jungle to try and find a way to get there. In that process, some historians and some accounts have said that he actually got lost, right? So, in an effort to try and turn him away, you had the king of the Aztecs, Moctezuma, or Montezuma, or whatever the heck the other third pronunciation is. Actually, it's a lot of different pronunciations. But he's actually Moctezuma II, first of all. The believed god king of their people. He heard that Cortes was on the way, right? So, he thought it might be a good idea to send this. Oh, also, he didn't think he was a god, right? This is common myth, okay? This is not very true at all. He didn't think that Cortes was a god. He thought he was possibly sent by one of their gods because one of their gods was named Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl was the guy they'd sacrifice to all the time because he's the god of destruction. He's a white flying snake monster, right? So, with that, sorry, Josie, did I scare you? Now, anyway, with that, because of the white skin and the floating temples that they arrived on, thought that they were possibly sent by them, right? We talked about this yesterday. So, the message, though, was to send them, don't come any closer. So a man actually emerged from the jungle bearing gifts for Cortes. Had gifts in the form of gold, had gifts in the form of a lot of different stuff. So, like different jaguar pelts, feathers, flowers. He sent all these things to him. But Cortes is going to begin to pursue anyway. And he's going to follow the man that sent the gifts back through the woods. Oh, God, rookie mistake, Moctezuma. You should have just let him wander around and die out there. Maybe would have got some yellow fever or something like that. That was the thing that the Europeans were susceptible to, was yellow fever. When we talk about Haiti, we'll actually talk all about how like it's really bad for them. Now, anyway, Cortes is going to show up regardless, right? So, going forward, though, when he gets there, Moctezuma originally welcomed him, right? Welcomed Cortes in, and they actually sat down with each other, and they began to exchange items, all right? So they began to exchange items. I believe one of the things Cortes gave him was a necklace that was woven on golden thread, and then actually Moctezuma gave Cortes a necklace with giant gold like medallions on it, right? So first thing they're going to do, though, is they're going to sit down, and they're going to be like, yo, big fella, there's this guy named Jesus, right? Red alert, red alert, red alert. Everything starts hitting the fan, right? Because, again, Moctezuma refuses to accept Christianity. Now, in this fit of rage, they are going to take Moctezuma prisoner, okay? They're going to take him prisoner, and they're going to hold him hostage. And they're going to be like, all right, Aztecs, if you want your leader back that you think's a god or whatever, you're going to have to surrender everything you have to us. Well, the Aztecs decide, heck no, because not only were they feeling insulted by the fact that they took their king hostage, there also was some rumblings inside of the Aztec community. They were like, wait a minute, if he could be taken hostage, he must not be that godlike. Oh, this is like Egyptian Mott. Maybe he's weak. Maybe we should just let him go. So also, though, because Cortes kind of slapped him in the face where he took a golden crucifix and he planted it on top of their religious temple. Oh, it's messed up, right? So anyway, in a battle that rages, because the Aztecs actually decided to take on the conquistadors and attack them, they actually drive the conquistadors out. But in that battle, Moctezuma is going to die because he is bludgeoned to death with a really big rock, right? So now, Tenochtitlan is going to lose their king in the battle. However, Cortes is going to come back with native allies to destroy Tenochtitlan. And this is made possible because, number one, smallpox had killed a lot of the Aztecs. And remember, where did they get their human sacrifices from? These other native tribes that Cortes had befriended along the way, right? So, rookie mistake, Aztecs. He could have been one of the biggest and baddest, but you had to kill everybody. Now, anyway, so they're going to be completely destroyed due to smallpox, just a terrible sacrificial system, and a lot of resentment, right? So Cortes is going to successfully take over the Central American area, particularly Mexico, right? So Spanish adventurer Francisco Pizarro is going to be sent to South America, where he hears of a different people, the Inca, right? The people we just talked about yesterday. He wants to take them over and claim their vast treasure that he hears about, right? So the Inca literally had such a large amount of gold and other items there that they didn't even know what to do with it. Actually, some guardsmen actually wore golden armor because they were like, hey, look, it's pretty. So, he decides that he's going to go there and he's going to take them over. And he wants to do it in a style much like Cortes had done successfully in Mexico. So he decides that since they have low numbers, because the Incans had just had a civil war with themselves, because remember, they didn't trade with anybody else, so of course they're only going to have a war with themselves. They're going to have a civil war, and he's like, this is my time to strike. So he decides to take King Atahualpa hostage. So he goes straight into the Incan Empire. He goes to Cusco, and he's like, hey, bro, you want to accept Christianity? And he says, And so he decides to take him hostage. Here's the difference, though. Pizarro realizes how much gold exists in the Incan Empire. He then decides to hold the king ransom. Genius. Kind of like when the Gauls sacked Rome, right? Remember when he held the city ransom? And he was like, woe be to the fallen. And like one of the coolest mic drops ever. He does a similar thing. He decides to actually hold King Atahualpa hostage. So the Spanish are going to kill thousands of the Inca because here's what happens. They demand this ridiculous ransom. The Inca paid it, and then Atahualpa died anyway. Francisco Pizarro stabbed him in the back after the ransom was paid, right? So the conquistadors are going to successfully take over the Incan Empire due to their low numbers. Disease is also going to play a factor with them as well because smallpox is going to eradicate most of their forces. And the Spanish are going to begin to set up gold and silver mines all over South America, right? They're going to begin to become Europe's biggest and strongest and most powerful country, period, right? So all the way up until this guy Philip II who decides to ruin it because he tries to take on a female queen. Well, not a female queen, of course it's a female queen, but the Queen of England. Rookie mistake, guy. Elizabeth's a tough lady. Now, anyway, the native populations are going to basically be wiped off the face of the planet. A lot of their customs are going to survive, and the remaining ones of them are going to begin to assimilate into with the conquistador society, right? The colonial society of Spain. They're actually going to become their own social classes later on. They're going to be called Creoles, okay? Or not Creoles, mestizos, okay? So the native populations are going to be wiped out. They had no chance to fight, but they only had one choice: convert or die, basically. Convert and concede, or just get eradicated, right? So this actually is 100% fact. It's a very terrible thing that happened. There are still some native groups that exist in South America and Central America, in like places like the rainforest and Amazon. But, you know, it's just kind of crazy to think that, like, what if they had access to Beasts of Burden and Metal? What would the world have been like, right? I do highly recommend Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, if you ever get a chance to read it. It's very, very solid. But, yeah, thank you for hanging with me on a snow day. So I'll see you guys later, and have a great evening, Honors.